Good evening and welcome at a new episode of IMPAKT TV. My name is Rosa Evers and I'm here together with Friso Wiersum.
That's me.
To talk about digital culture, and we're going to do that with a very special guest. Today's guest is Doortje Smithuijsen. Doortje Smithuijsen is a philosopher, a documentary maker and a writer. She writes amongst others for Trouw, Volkskrant, Vrij Nederland. She also writes books. And she had made 3 documentaries, all discussing various aspects of our digital culture, including influencers, YouTubers who are children as well, but also cancel culture. And her latest book is almost coming out on September 20, so we will also be discussing that. I would like to welcome you, Doortje. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, nice to be here. Digitally.
Digitally, yes.
Which is very fitting, of course, for this
It
topic.
is, because actually we've had a short conversation before we were going to start with an official program, in which we perhaps concluded that a red thread in our conversation could be how those, what some people think separate realms of online and offline are no longer to be seen as separate spaces, but as overlapping and mutually influencing. Perhaps we might start there because your upcoming book, as mentioned, to be publicly launched on the 20th of September in the Amsterdam cultural venue Spy 25. Tickets still available, I guess?
Yes, it's the 22nd, actually.
22nd, so people changed the calendar. And it's called in Dutch, Iedereen verslaafd, everyone addicted.
Yes.
There's no question mark.
There is a question mark.
Then is it true or is it not true?
Well, with that question, you actually asked me to summarize the whole book. So that's basically the whole scope of it. I guess a short answer would be it depends on how you see addiction. And when I started writing this book, I really thought about addiction as something that happened to other people mainly. You get addicted to cigarettes or to booze or to pornography or gaming or whatever. But there's this group of people who suffer from addiction, and there's this other group to which I also thought I was a member, who do not. And after spending 3 years researching this subject and sort of doing a lot of introspection and reading a lot of literature and interviewing a lot of people, both psychologists, psychiatrists, people who work a lot with addicted people, addicted children, but mostly people who would call themselves digitally addicts, so pornography addicts, gaming addicts, phone addicts, grinder addicts. Really, there's so many different types of addiction right now. My whole view of this idea of addiction has changed so much, and yes, I do feel like we all get addicted sometimes. I'm not sure what the English version of this is, but what I say now is that we vertonen allemaal wel eens verslaafd gedrag. So we all behave in an addicted manner, I guess you could say, sometimes, but that doesn't make us all addicts.
Give us a few examples of those addictive manners.
Well, those addictive manners right now, they are everywhere, and they are hard, if not impossible, to escape, because we surround ourselves with technology that is highly addictive, because it is made that way. It is made by people who know exactly how our psyche works and how our body works, and how to tap into that little space that makes you very reliable to sort of yeah, they can really make you addicted to anything. And it's for example, a game like Candy Crush.
For those
It's
people
so
not knowing what Candy Crush is, can you, in 5 words, explain for people what Candy Crush is?
it's just a simple game for your phone, and it's sort of it's very it's really like a child's game, but it's so addicted. And especially actually young women, like women around 30, get addicted to Candy Crush. And I think this is because they feel like they won't get addicted to this, come on, you know but before you know it, every time you're on a bus, every time you are waiting, you're playing this stupid game. And this is something that it's called, behavioral technology. So it's the technology that sort of knows its way around our brains very well, around our behavior. It the technicians behind it, they very well understand the way our brain works and the moments in the day that we feel like we feel a little bit lost or feel a little bit scared or whatever. And that is the moment that they come up with this new technical thing. And before you know it, well, you're hooked. And I mean, I can look at myself and think that I'm not addicted because I don't drink very heavily, I don't smoke, and I mean, I don't have to watch porn every day or game every day, but I do look at my phone every time I have to wait for something. Every single time. There's not a moment in my life right now that I'm waiting for something that I will not look at my phone or want to look at my phone. And I mean, if you think of it, that's kind of weird too.
And so you just said, I don't smoke, I don't drink. I do look at my phone all the time. How do you think society is looking differently maybe at digital addictions than offline addictions? Do you think there is a bit difference? Is that changing also? And
Yes,
I see
it's
it coming
very
on the screen. Sorry, small interruption. If you're
Yes.
watching, you can also ask questions that we will ask for you. So you can go send a question to questions@impact.nl or scan the code
Scan the
that's now
QR.
on the screen, and it appears on screen. But back to the question. So is there this difference,
Yeah.
you think, in how we perceive online versus
Yes.
drugs addiction?
Well, this is a very interesting question. And this was also one of the main questions actually in my book. And yeah, I feel like the way we look at digital addictions is very different than the way we look at, I guess, what you would call traditional addictions, like addictions to alcohol or cigarettes or drugs, maybe. Um, in my book, I chose the example of smoking at one point. Like when someone smokes in this day and age, we kind of don't want to see that, right? They have to stand outside. Sometimes they can't even stand on the terrace of the restaurant. Like they have to go away. We don't want to look at someone being, that unhealthy. That's really how we feel about it. But then when someone is addicted to, for example, this is a very serious addiction that is coming up right now a lot, to their Fitbit, to the stopper teller. I'm not sure what the English word is. I guess
The
it's
app
Fitbit.
counting the steps you do per day, like a
Yeah, when your
fitness app.
steps are being counted. Yeah, the fitness apps. This is a very serious addiction for many people, but because we sort of see, working out, being on the move, walking around, losing weight, probably we see that as healthy. But the thing is, when you put those two people, for example, someone who is addicted to smoking and someone who's addicted to the Fitbit in an MRI scanner, you see basically the same thing happening. So the addiction, the feeling of addiction is basically the same. The dependency that is felt with cigarettes or your Fitbit is basically the same. But because we see the Fitbit as healthy and good, we we don't really care. And if we do care, we think it's a good addiction. It's when we talk about sports or say, oh, it's so addictive. That's not a metaphor. It's actually
is,
addictive.
yeah.
So yeah, and especially, of course, we love, as modern people, we love sort of measuring ourselves. And when you think of an app like Strava, for example, or any of these apps that measure your own progression with running or whatever kind of sports, it's kind of like a game. It's totally sort of the gamification of your own body. And this is super addictive because it combines the sort of the thrill of a game, getting into a next level every time, with the physical addictive feelings of sports.
And so for your book, you also spoke with a lot of people who are facing these addictions, right? Do you think that these people feel taken less seriously also? And would it help to understand these online addictions more as a serious form of addiction?
Definitely. Yes. A lot of the people I spoke to actually told me that they didn't even know that their addiction existed before they were, totally rock bottom, and they went to a clinic, and then they told them, oh, you're addicted to Instagram, or you're addicted to social media in general, or you're addicted to Grindr, or anything. Because of course these people, they work with addicts all the time, so they immediately see that, oh, this person is highly addicted. But a lot of the people I spoke to, they actually told me, like, I wish I knew that you could actually be addicted to YouTube, which is a very serious addiction actually. But they tell me, like, I wish I knew, because then I would have looked at my own behavior differently.
And then that, of course, brings us to a question. If you have let's say, perhaps we all have a character that is open to be an addictive personality, would you be able to stop yourself, knowing that, for example, you are in the process of becoming a YouTube addict?
Yeah.
Would there be signals that you could know, like, I am now watching YouTube again for the 7th hour, and I think I'm refreshing the playlist again and again? Would there be moments when somebody that has a tendency to be addictive could recognize him or herself to become addicted?
Yeah, that is a very difficult thing to give you one answer to, because what you're actually asking is, can people stop themselves from getting addicted, I guess?
Yeah.
And that is something that really depends per person, and that has to do, like, with whether you are very drawn to addiction. Has to do with lots of things. It has to do with your genetics, has to do with the circumstances, and it is not something that everyone can control. And
I'm getting there because, for example, a traditional addiction as alcoholism, there's a certain number of glasses per week. I think like a Trimbos Institute that deals with addiction. Say, like, if you drink this amount of glasses per week, then you are a serious drinker. If you drink this amount, then you might be in the beginning of an addiction. If you're drinking this. So there's parameters made by general analysis on, I think, a lot of people that have been drinking, so that there's a few, how would you say so? Well, parameters might be the best word to find out for yourself whether you'll be addictive. But this, this might not be there for YouTube or Grindr or.
Well, the thing with a lot of things, and this is what a lot of psychologists actually told me, is that it doesn't really matter how much of anything you do, how many hours you spend with a game or on a pornography website. It matters why. Why do you go there? Why? What is it that you are looking for? And what's really at the base of basically any addiction is that there's discomfort within you. There is this feeling that you want to get rid of. A very small example is the one I just gave, with me having to wait and just getting, because I have, of course, a very internet addicted mind, so I'm bored very easily, so I want to distract myself. This is a very small example, but of course for a lot of people, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of discomfort in life, there's a lot of feelings that you don't know how to deal with, and for a lot of people these digital solutions are a way to shake those feelings. And the thing with these behavioral technology is that it manipulates your behavior. So it means that, of course, I mean, it makes your brain um, make dopamine. It creates a dopamine rush. So every time that you feel bad again, you want to come back to this thing that you know
Will
makes you better,
makes you feel
makes you
good for
feel
a
better.
moment.
Yeah.
And then it is perhaps, let's get to your research for the book soonish too, but there's a lot of progress in neuroscience where also a lot of scientists are mapping our brains much more in detail than they were able to do, let's say, 30 years ago. Is it a coincidence, this might be a big question, is it a coincidence that these addictions to something as this, for the viewers at home, and the mapping of our brain comes together at this time?
Sorry, what is your question?
Well, there's been a lot more insight in how our brain functions. No, so there's a lot more details with people that know how to manipulate our brain, not only in technology but in many other things too. Is it a coincidence that, let's say, internet and neuroscience are making big steps at the same time?
What do you think?
Well, I think no, because I think
No,
there's
I think no too.
yeah.
I mean, I don't know for sure, but I think no too. Yeah.
Yeah. So then I think then we get to that idea there's a profit model behind making people addicted, and then I think we get to why you get interested in addictions in the first place, because it was not the first thing you researched in internet cultures. And is this a moment to look at a fragment from an earlier documentary?
Yeah, maybe I will say a little bit more, because we've talked now a lot about of users of social media, people who are addicted to watching YouTube or maybe Instagram or Grindr. But a lot of your work is also on the producers of social media. So you looked a lot at vloggers or people. I really find it's a very fascinating documentary about basically I think it's more about the parents than the children who vlog.
It's actually we started out with the children because I was so fascinated with like these babies really sort of coming up with their own YouTube channel. So I wanted to know, like, how do they do this? Like, do they film themselves? Do they make their own edit? I was so impressed with like 5-year-olds. And then we came there, of course, and then it turned out that it was all the parents. So it became a different documentary than I thought, yeah.
And also, I think very much the parents putting their own dreams on these children, in a way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and what I tried to say with this documentary, I'm not sure if it really comes true, but is that it's also a new way of doing something that has been done over and over for years, like parents really deeply believing that their children are the most special children that are ever born and they deserve the biggest platform there is. And of course right now that's YouTube, so why not start off your child with a YouTube channel when it's like 4, because
so late,
you know it's the biggest star. Yeah.
Jeez.
And I think what comes across in that documentary, but also in Volg je me nog, Are You Still Following Me?
Yeah.
Rough translation. Is also how these algorithms are very much even determining what people are wearing, where they are traveling, how they organize their lives. I think in the Volg je me nog documentary, we see a lot of, you follow 3 influencers who also were a bit faced with the effect of becoming unlikable or losing followers or likes because they didn't behave anymore according to the expectations.
Yeah, it was around the time when Instagram was around for 10 years. And I was wondering, like, so 10 years is like roughly a generation. So I was like how will this first generation of influencers sort of, how will they feel about this being kind of old in digital years. So this was very much the theme. Like they started out when they were like 20, and now they were 30. And yeah, for an influencer, that's already, I mean, yeah, that's kind of old. So we were sort of I wanted to investigate, like, how do you grow along in this world that's actually also very much about being young and being fresh all the time.
I think that's a good time to turn to a short fragment that we're going to watch from the documentary Volg je me nog? Yes, I found when I saw the scene for the first time, I found it so striking that in this conversation, so we see an influencer and I think her manager or her agency maybe.
Yeah, it's her manager and like another manager. It's like two managers. Yeah.
And they're literally telling her first, you are a brand. Oh yeah, and also you're a person.
Yeah,
can you tell a bit more about
things.
this theme and why you wanted to show it?
Well, it's one of the main characters from the documentary, and she is actually faced with quite a difficult time within her influencer's career because she used to travel a lot. She was really like this traveling girl kind of influencer, having pictures taken in Italy and France and all kinds of beautiful places. And then, of course, COVID hit. So she couldn't really travel anymore. So her following went really down. And then now, maybe you saw it in a clip, maybe not, but she's also very pregnant. So this is also something that is going on in her life. Like she has to make the decision, like, will we show the baby in my feed? Actually, she's decided already that she will. So this will be a new chapter in her life. But of course, when we were shooting the documentary, I talked a lot with her, actually very interesting conversations we had about the way that the presence of her online image, or the way it was present in her life all the time, actually made her own identity sort of fade. So because she had to think about who she was online all the time, she didn't really know who she was in the end.
Because
and this is something that's...
that her online personality took over her offline real her?
Well, I mean, yes, but I guess we all have an online personality, of course. But I guess when you start to curate it as much as she is, or influencers are, chances are that you will think so hard about the way you want to come across online that you sort of feel estranged with the real side of yourself. Like when the side of yourself that you can tweak and that you can manage is so omnipresent, then the human and not very controllable side of you sort of it sort of falls away, it slips away. Also because it's less important.
Yeah. And then, do you happen to know what she's doing now that Corona seems to disappear from her life?
She's doing great. Yeah, she had her child. It's a very beautiful little boy, and she lives in a beautiful house. We also shot there while we were filming. So yeah, she's doing great. Yeah.
Maybe I want to turn now to a question about also your role as a documentary maker.
Yes.
Because the scene that we see here is still also very much almost like a fly on the wall. We are there and we can make judgments or not, or we can make an understanding of what we see. I think this is even more the case in your first documentary, Mijn dochter de vlogger.
Yes.
Where you are shown, or where you see what is happening, you record, but you are yourself not so much present there. And this is also changing, I think, in your latest documentary, where you see yourself present as a documentary maker. Can you tell a little bit more about that shift and why
Yeah,
your
well, I
style is
mean,
changing?
it's very much a process. I guess when I started to do research also to this world, like this digital world, I really did not see myself that much as a someone who was also in that world. I really saw it as yeah, like a sort of yeah, exactly like you say, like fly on the wall. I just wanted to investigate, and yeah, I really started with these children with a flogging flogging parents, and yeah, this was a movie that was indeed very fly on the wall and very it very much let the audience sort of decide how they felt. And when I look back at that now, I would never. I mean, I still love that movie, but I would never make it like that again.
And why
Because
not? Yeah.
yeah, well, because I've started to see that my own role in this whole digital world is also very important actually when you investigate the lives of others. I feel you have to also investigate your own life and your own situation, because it also I don't really believe in objectivity. You always take your own takes and points of view and context and you know, everything that's in you and around you, you take that with you in your work. And yeah, that's why with Volg je me nog, I wanted my voice to be heard, to ask them the questions. But for example, my first book, Gouden Bergen, actually, or yeah, like Golden Mountains. I actually came up with the idea that was very much like my daughter the vlogger. It would be a book about influencers, you know, like following them around, sort of, yeah, getting a look into this crazy life of these girls who are always busy with getting themselves on social media. But along the way, I realized that their lives were not that different from my own. And the way they looked at themselves are not that different than the way that I look at myself. But they just choose to expose themselves more. And they choose this way to sort of make their lives feel good and achieve a feeling of success. But for me, I mean, I choose different ways to achieve that feeling, but I want to achieve it as well. So that was why actually that book became a lot more personal than I intended it to be. And I mean, the same happened actually with Everyone Addicted. I mean, I thought I would be, and actually, I really discussed this also with my editor. I said like, I'm afraid that people are going to hate me because I'm not a very I never get addicted. I'm not prone to addiction. And then I will talk about addiction for a whole book, and people will be like, yeah, but we want to sort of connect through stories that we can relate to. And then, of course, yeah, I find out I had like several addictions through the research. So it all was okay in the end, but yeah.
And it's might also be seen as an example where actually, if you're an outsider into the online world, where you were researching phenomena away from you, and then seeing that actually that it has consequences for the offline world, that then perhaps when those two are there, then they might mix in your life too. So then if you do a book on addictions, it's not only other people's online addictions, but it's also the mechanisms that you recognize in yourself and perhaps these online addictions. And then you said you had a few. Would you mind sharing
Yeah.
one with us and the viewers?
Yeah, sure. Well, for example, on this, I think this is a very good example of a modern day addiction. Like, just like basically everyone in this country, I was looking to buy a house. a year ago or something. And of course, it didn't work out. I mean, we don't have to get into how bad this market is right now, but it was, of course, very terrible. But I got actually pretty seriously addicted to Funda, which is the Dutch website that lists all the houses that are for sale. And this is, I mean, it is crazy how many people visit Funda every day. It is the 5th most popular website in the Netherlands, which is crazy. Like, it's even more popular than Instagram as a website. So it's insane.
It has beautiful spin-offs with friend groups having WhatsApp groups to share the most ridiculous Funda advertisements.
Well,
Probably,
actually,
but it's
I was at a music festival in July, and during a concert, I kid you not, we saw somebody looking at Funda
at Funda
during a musical concert, like in the audience.
Yeah, but this is how people feel right now. And I mean, for me, it was so interesting because when you look at this website, it is actually what, you know, you can really wonder what's so nice about it. I mean, it's just a list of houses and you can click on them, because the thing is that Funda, it sort of sells us the idea that we can buy a house through this website. But everyone who has ever looked for actually buying a house in this country knows that no one buys a house through Funda. Like, you never click on this button like
Buy.
get me a mortgage and like I now I got this house, like the keys will be sent to you. No, it does not work like that.
I actually think
you
that's
see this house.
it's a safe idea, no? That is not possible.
Yeah, but I mean, you have to call the real estate, and you have to get in line, and it's very hard. So I really understood. For me, this was a very interesting moment, because all of a sudden I saw what these websites are also doing is they are taking a very real problem we have society-wide. Like, we all have it. It's a problem in our society, in our country. It's not your own problem, but they turn it into something that you feel like you can fix yourself. As long as you are on Funda all the time, you get the feeling like you will get out of this housing crisis.
Yeah.
So it's sort of it takes a very big problem and makes it personal. And this is why Funda is so popular, I think. And in a broader sense, it is how a lot of the digital addictions work. Because, for example, if you take something like Grindr or social media, I mean, loneliness. I've made up or I've come up with a very big chapter actually in my book that is about modern day loneliness. This is such a big problem. Like, so many people in Europe alone are saying that they are lonely. 1 in 5 Dutch people says that they are seriously lonely. And I mean, the best solution we have right now is our digital life. You can go on Grindr or on Instagram and you can kind of sell yourself the idea that you are not alone.
That you're connected, at least.
That you are connected and that you are just one click away from finding your big love, or that, you know, you can sort of show yourself. Like, I have 356 friends on Instagram, so I must be popular. And this is why these things are so popular right now, because they feel like solutions to way bigger problems that no one can solve on their own.
And there's an interesting paradox there as well, because, of course, on the one hand, maybe when you feel lonely, these platforms promise us connection. They give you the illusion that you have all these friends, so they name contacts, they turn them into friends, even though I don't think everybody would consider their Instagram friends as real friends. And at the same time, these apps...
But I do, actually.
Oh, sorry. No. And at the same time, these apps... it's quite common there to constantly show the best version of yourself, to curate this life where you seem to be always having fun, be full of friends. Do you think this even strengthens that loneliness?
Yes, of course. Yes, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's a vicious circle. Like, you cannot get out of this. And this is why they work, because when people feel lonely, these platforms thrive. They need people to feel lonely because that's why we get on those platforms. And this is, of course, very interesting because, loneliness was not invented by Facebook. Facebook's first advertisement actually said, I'm probably not saying it all the way correctly, but it said something like, the world is a very dark and very lonely place. It makes you wonder whether you are all alone. Facebook is here to show you that you are not. So, this only could have worked when we already felt like, yeah, this is quite a lonely place, right? So they sort of taken this loneliness that probably just came up with, society as it has been evolving the last decennia, like with individualism, neoliberalism,
Or maybe
everything.
with the beginning of humankind.
No, I don't know, because I do feel like this modern day loneliness that I'm describing did very much come up with sort of the loss of, religion, smaller villages, people knowing each other. This is quite a like 21st century problem, I would say.
But that's also Greek philosophers, of course, who already complained about the loss of cohesion in a society, or 19th century philosophers who said that modernism would alienate people from their natural surroundings.
Yeah, well, it did.
Yeah. So maybe it's more perennial than we think that it is.
Well, maybe this is
I'm
actually
not sure what Plato said about loneliness, but I'll look it up.
Maybe you're more of an optimist. That could be good.
But I actually think
No, definitely.
this might be a good time to take a quick look at two memes that we...
Yeah.
Yes.
And
I
also
love
to bring
memes.
in one of the questions from audience that was asked to us in the chat.
Oh,
Is it
cool.
possible to go
Yeah.
to the memes? Yeah, great.
So here maybe the idea is that people that don't know the mechanisms of social media and tagging each other all the time would say that if you are friends, why don't you communicate with one another? But
Yeah.
for younger people, this is their way of communicating, right? So that's...
I sent this one to a friend the other day, a friend who I send memes over.
Yeah, we did our research
over
really
with.
well.
Yeah, I know. Great.
No, but then what would you say to, for example, a elder therapist that would say, but this is not communication, this is just a waste of time?
Yeah. Well, the thing with memes is that, yes, it is not communication, but it also is. Like the internet, of course, provides us with a way of communicating that is so much faster and so much more efficient than calling each other on the phone, for example. And especially with memes, I feel like it's such a great way to sort of, it sort of comprise, is that a word? It compromises, or it sort of
Compresses.
It compresses, for instance.
Yeah, it compresses like so many feelings and emotions and ideas and stuff that people feel like right now into one very efficient frame. And this is why it's so popular. Like you send this to your friend, and I mean, what you're actually saying, I mean, it's so meta, of course, but then you're actually saying like, yeah, I love sending you memes. We send each other memes all the time. And I love that. But of course, it's also quite silly because we are actually right now, we're like two ping-ponging cats and we're not communicating. But that, I guess that's what's life like right now because we're both busy, blah, blah, blah. You can go on forever, but you don't say all that. You just send the cat. And this is something that is sort of a metaphor, I guess, for the way we communicate right now as a whole, because we have so many ways to communicate, our communication is also quite shallow and quite impersonal. like for example with WhatsApp, and this is also very it depends really on the person, I guess, because when I can send someone a text that is like 3 words and they feel like, oh, that's great, or like 5 words, or like 2 sentences, and they're like, oh, that's fine. But you can also feel very offended by it. But we don't really tap into these emotions anymore. We don't see how someone feels when you send them a text, because we don't look them in the eyes. So this is a very, I guess with the way we are also very connected right now, a lot of our personality has sort of, went missing from our communication.
Yeah, this reminds me also of these dating apps where I forgot which app it was, but apparently there's an app that you have to go immediately on an in-person date. And when you come back from the dates, you can say, yes, I want another date, or no, I don't want to do it anymore. So it's completely erasing that awkward moment of having to say, I'm not really feeling like a next date. On the other hand, it seems to be, I think it's also meant as a nice way to prevent people from ghosting each other.
Yeah, but it's also sounds like hell to me to have to go on a date with. I mean, this is a blind date, really. I mean, what's more hellish than that? And it's also, we sort of. This is the thing with.
Sorry? That are worse than a blind date. Knowing that you will be on a date with an awful person is already worse, no?
Yeah, that's also, that's also not very nice. But I mean, it's interesting, this thing also, for example, with ghosting. Like, this is quite, I mean, I read this really nice book, actually, from Dolly Alderton. She's a dating columnist from the Sunday Times. And she wrote a book it's a novel about someone who is being ghosted, And it made me think about this, because maybe for someone who doesn't know what ghosting is, it's like when you've been hanging out or dating for like a couple of weeks or even months, and then someone just stops replying your messages and just sort of completely disappears, like a ghost. And it sort of made me think about what it says about our ways of communicating right now, because what is of course so interesting is that you used to be able to ghost all the time. I mean, it's not a new thing to do, right? I mean, this was also possible when we had old phones or when we wrote letters, but then you just never did. And I feel like this shows that because we have all these in, so many possibilities, even on these dating apps. When you go on a dating app, you feel like there's like 100 possible loves of your life, that you get even more focused on yourself, and you just don't really care that much anymore. It's like, maybe she hates me now, but that's fine, because I've actually seen that there's 100 other women who want to date me.
Yeah. And then maybe to make a small switch to something slightly, perhaps next to this, also the discontent, no? That actually we can pretend to be someone else than we are on internet and on social media, has perhaps provoked the popularity of the app of last summer, Be Real, where we're not pretending to be the best persona, because this is an app that invites us to take a photo at a certain moment and share this with those people that are with our followers or friends. I don't know what is the term that is being used in Be Real. What does it say that a social media enterprise comes up with, let's say, an app that is using using our guilt that we are not always real on social media and making it into an app?
I mean, where do I start? Like, I have so many feelings about Be Real, because it's the perfect example of how technology works right now. I mean, we have this sense that we are not real enough because we have been using these platforms that made us show not very real version of ourselves, because that's how the algorithm works. We did not come up with filters, like they made us use it. So now we don't feel real anymore. So then this app comes up with this, you don't feel real anymore, then you just download this app, and we tell you a time a day that you have to share a photo of yourself with no filter and no makeup if you don't have it on or whatever, and then you are real again. I mean, this is so wrong in so many ways. I feel like we don't feel as real as we want to feel because we are using so many apps, and then there's a new app that tells us if you use this app you'll be real again.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's sort of, it really goes beyond the whole the whole fact that being online and sort of showing yourself through an app and through social media platforms is already a choice. You don't have to use your phone to show others who you are
No.
and how real you are or not. And this is, I think, the way that we tend to think about technology in a lot of ways. Like I have the same feeling about apps like Calm or Headspace, you know? We feel stressed all the time because we are on our phones all the time, and we feel like we have to reply to all the emails and all the WhatsApps that come into our phones all the time. And to de-stress, we take our phones, we open an app that says it will provide us with headspace, literally, and we sit down with our phones next to us because the phone is speaking to us while we are meditating for 10 minutes, and then we have sort of fulfilled
Had
this
our
task,
moment,
and now
yeah.
we are done.
Yeah. And then, because we also feel pressure, because we were just saying that we have only 10 more minutes, and we have a few rather huge questions coming in via the chat.
Okay.
Nafisa, for example, is asking, also talking about be real as perhaps the most ironical development in social media. After doing research for your book, have you found that the way you interact with social media has changed?
Oh, that's a nice question. No, it has not very much changed, but I do understand why I do what I do much better. And I try to also sort of navigate through that. So I do know right now that when I feel bad, I will be on my phone much more.
So
And
does
I
it-
also know that that's fine. That's okay.
So if you're waiting for a bus at the moment that you described, then there's a small signal in your brain saying, get your phone because it gives you dopamine. And right after, you will be so meta as to say, so this is a dopamine signal that I'm going to get happy by looking at my phone, but it's okay because I recognize this.
Yeah, and also, this is also quite technical about addiction, but part of the addiction is also the self-hatred that comes along with it. So when you start to despise yourself because you are on your phone too much, you will be on your phone much more because you will feel much more discomfort. So this is something that I feel like we are very, very strict with ourselves, like watching our screen times, doing these digital detoxes. And I always feel like, yeah, why would you do a digital detox? I mean, if you feel like you're on your phone for the wrong reasons, then that's something you could look into, and that could really, should probably change. But yeah, to sort of restrict yourself or feel bad because you have been on your phone for 3 hours or whatever, I mean, it's not really going to get you anywhere. And I mean, it's not your own idea mostly to be on your phone. It's mostly society asking you to react on certain things, or your job or whatever. So yeah, don't be too hard on yourself also.
Okay, then maybe in connection to a question that came in here via Lotte, I think you addressed that we are being told that it's a personal responsibility, which is not our personal responsibility because it has been programmed or societal demands. But Lotte's question is, so in a case of digital addiction, who are the ones that can tackle this? We have school classes where there's classes on media literacy, but there's no school class, as far as I know, on how to deal with your phone or with digital addictions. And Lotte is asking, what is our own role, that of the government, and that of the companies that have actually programmed these social media?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question.
Yeah, and we have exactly
And
5
this is
minutes.
Yeah, this is something that is actually, the medical world is also struggling with. Because, of course, when someone is addicted to heroin, well, they have to be helped right now. This is very serious. But when you are addicted to Snapchat, you're probably not going to die. Or, I mean, I have seen cases of people like being addicted to gaming so severely that they were actually, very unhealthy and not getting out of the house and stuff. But it's what I think is very important is that we should stop making this our own problem only. So digital addiction is something that society should look at, and whether that is political or more has to do with exactly like schools or parents thinking about this more, or just, and I think mostly what would really help is us just talking about it more. I feel like our digital life is very private, and I think that's for a reason. I think no one would really like to share their search history, what exactly they're looking on YouTube or whatever. I mean, we are very private about that, and that's also okay. But I mean, it would also be good to share these things a bit more.
There's an app for this soonish, I guess.
Probably, yeah.
Latest questions?
Yeah, so actually in our conversation before, because now we talked a little bit or a lot about the downsides of the internet, how it also makes you lonely or leads to disconnect. But you also said the internet is also kind of fun.
Yeah.
Do you still stand by that?
Yes. I mean, what I said, I mean, the internet is great and it has very, very nice sides. I mean, when I look at a meme like that, I'm really happy it exists. But like I said, it is kind of also like alcohol. I mean, I love alcohol, but you just shouldn't drink it all the time. And this is probably the same with internet. Like, it's very nice. It can be very social. It can be very creative, but it's something that we should think about our collective relationship to it and what it's doing to us. And I do feel like, yeah, you can maybe sort of look at it like we looked at smoking before, and it really sort of influences also our mental state and our health, and we should be mindful of that. But I still love it. Yeah.
I think that's a very happy...
Do you? I mean, do you love
Well, I mean, without internet, we wouldn't even have this conversation. So
yeah, exactly.
Thank you, internet. But I think your comment on we should have more conversations with perhaps our dear people around us on what it is that they are doing on the internet would be fun. And then I'm taking this one step further. Imagine I'm commuting sometimes for my job and I'm in a train and then we're 60 people in the same car all looking at the phone. How odd would it be for people if I would stand up and say, okay, so I quit my social media use right now because I just learned from Doortje Smithuijsen that we should have open conversations on what we do with our social media. Shall we all share what we have been doing?
Yeah, well, this is interesting because I feel like being on a train and sort of creating your own space at that moment by putting in AirPods and looking at your own little screen is totally fine. I mean, people didn't communicate with the whole coupe in 1850. They had their newspaper. Yeah. It's totally normal to want to create a little bit of your own space within a public atmosphere. Yeah. So for me, I mean, what I would find to have more value is to, for example, communicate about what the moments are with your loved ones or with your friends, about what the moments are where you feel like you really cannot do without your phone. For me, for example, I'm in the countryside right now, so I take a lot of walks. And I have been standing by the charger of my phone today for like 10 minutes because I thought it would not last my whole walk. And I want to listen to a podcast or whatever. I cannot walk in silence, apparently. And this was a moment when I felt like, why can't I do this? Why is this so hard? So those are the moments that you realize how dependent you are. And again, it's not bad per se to be dependent. I mean, we are dependent of so many things in our life. But yeah, be mindful about it.
I think this is almost like an amen to our conversation with you, Doortje Smithuijsen, on addictions and how online worlds and offline worlds are actually a lot more interconnected than we sometimes think. And I think that, well, we're going to have long discussions on what social media we use and at what moments we actually do so. But before we're going to thank you officially, we have this little thing where we also need to announce the next episodes of IMPAKT TV.
And that will be on October 4 with José van Dijk. José van Dijk is a professor at Utrecht University, and she's a professor in media and digital society. And her specialty is actually on platforms and how these platforms are very much based on commercial values. I think that also adds to the addictive value of it. And José van Dijk is also thinking about how could we envision these kind of platforms in a different way, namely based on public values. So that is what we will discuss on October 4, with Professor José van Dijk. And there's more.
A month later, there will be IMPAKT Festival. I see that we're actually skipping IMPAKT Festival, which has a lot to do with the topic we discussed today, the curse of smooth operations, happening live in Utrecht and online everywhere, 2 to the 6th of November. And then we had for our latest IMPAKT TV episode with La Turbo Avedon on being an artist in the metaverse on the 7th of December. So that's all the commercial messages. We take them out, and then we can finally say, Doortje, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, let's do it again soon then. And then for those people that actually want to confess to one another what is their heart moment in
what are their online addictions.
Yeah, there's a rooftop bar. It's a virtual drink. Let's be totally honest. It's also virtual smokes. It is virtual anything. See you there. And Doortje, wishing you a very lovely evening on the countryside and lots of fun with the book launch on September 20.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thanks for the questions.
Lotte, Nafisa, that's for you, eh? Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.